Hello everybody and welcome to Commodity Culture, where we break down the commodity space for both new and experienced investors. My name is Jesse Day, and before we get started, standard disclaimer, nothing here is investing advice. Do your own due diligence. And today's guest is the CEO of Golden Spike Resources, a Canadian company exploring the Gregory River property in Newfoundland for gold, copper, and other base metals. It's Mr. Keith Anderson. Great to have you on.
Hey, Jesse, thanks for having me on. Pleasure to be here today.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you. And I want to get started like I do with all new guests with the origin story. So how did you discover the metals and mining space, and how did that road lead you to becoming the CEO of Golden Spike Resources?
Well, how far do we want to go back here? I think it's kind of in my DNA, I would say a little bit. My father was a broker at back from the Canarum days, or pre-Canarum, which ended in, well, it's now called Canaccord. So as I was finishing school, going to college, always wanted to get into the stock market, wanted to be a stockbroker. You know, I looked at what my dad did, found it intriguing and exciting. So just a natural movement into what he was doing. So I started Canarum back like years and years ago. Was a broker for probably close to 25 years. And I think that what got me about this industry, especially in the mineral side, is most of my career I spent working on exploration type deals, the junior exploration side of things. I found the people fascinating. I loved the deal flow. I loved the action in the market. It was extremely exciting when you're there. Like, there's no market like a mining market when it's working, right? So I just really gravitated towards that and kind of built my career around it. So I've been involved with junior exploration pretty much since I started in the market. And like I said, I spent about close to 25 years at Canaccord. I had a good pal of mine. He came to me a few years back saying, hey, you should come to the other side now. Let's come and work on this side. And you know what? I did 25 years at Canaccord. I enjoyed all of those years. I really enjoyed the people, but it was, it was an easy transition for me. So I did. I moved over to the side of running a public company, and Golden Spike. I couldn't be more excited. I got I think a fantastic company here and a fantastic project going forward.
Great. Well, I definitely want to dive into Golden Spike Resources a little later in the interview. But first, I want to discuss a few of the macro fundamentals here in 2023 for gold as well as copper. And the first thing I wanted to get your thoughts on was central bank gold buying. Central banks around the world are increasing their gold reserves dramatically, including a record 1,087 tons added last year. 228 tons already added in Q1 of this year. Of course, that's just what's on record. Some countries, people point to China as not actually accurately reporting the numbers. It could be much bigger. So what do you think is behind this accumulation of gold by central banks? And is this bullish for the gold price long term?
Oh, I think it's incredibly bullish for the gold price long term. I mean, like, bearing in mind, I'm not a specialist in the various factors, that drive the gold markets and gold reserves, but I can definitely give you my opinion. I think right now, as we look around the world, there's a great deal of instability right now. You got economies still pretty fragile, having just come out of the COVID-19 sort of lockdowns. We have inflation's been running rampant. Although starting to slow a bit, it's being brought maybe under control a bit with with these higher interest rates and that. But it still remains, in some places it's coming under control, but it remains unsustainably high in many other places, so it's, the interest rates are definitely as high as they've been probably in over several decades now. And that's helping slow the economy a bit. In addition, you got several banks that have recently failed, worldwide, and investors remain on edge as the possibility of recession, market crashes, bank failures, all this stuff, linger into everyone's mind. And at the same time, war rages on. You've got the Ukraine, and there's other parts of the world. We got war going on. So right now, I look at it as the world's not a stable place, and gold has always been that safe haven in these uncertain times. And so now, like I said, I'm not an economist. I'm not a specialist in gold markets. But it seems like central banks are also seeing this and the safety associated with gold. And as more jurisdictions, as they're accumulating reserves and the global demand increases, I see the price of gold is just going to continue its upward trajectory. I mean, and you have to look, like, we're buying or central banks are buying record amounts at these lofty prices. I mean, you've got gold kind of hovering around that 2,000. Over the last couple of years, we had pulled back to say 1,800 level, back up to 2,000. Over the last few months, where these record buys are coming in, we're seeing pretty stable, like I'd say a $2,000 kind of price here lately. We've been up over 2,000, trying to hit, to record highs, but pretty stable, it seems, at that $2,000 level. And so it's interesting to see central banks buying record amounts at these lofty prices.
I think that's a very good point that I haven't heard anybody make before, was that central banks are not only accumulating record levels, but at these price valuations. You'd think they'd want to wait for a dip, so to speak, or buy when the valuations become more attractive. But that could definitely be indicative that they believe the price is going much higher from here.
The one thing that's kind of, I think, is a miss right now is you've got, when we go back, the market was starting to get pretty good, sort of the late teens into 2000 before COVID happened. And then we had that little surge from, say it was around May, when the market started to recover. It was May to August. So we had a 4-month run where gold was taking off and some other commodities. But you saw a lot of the exploration deals, the mining companies, all hitting highs, like all of them, as gold was hitting kind of up to record highs. Then over COVID, we had this pullback over 3-year period. Not that it pulled right back, but it came off those highs and was, you'd have weeks of where, gold's back on fire, here we go, and then it would stall. So the equities, even though we've got gold back up at these lofty levels again, a lot of the equities haven't. I mean, certainly the gold producers and the bigger companies are doing better, but I've looked at charts and stuff, and they're nowhere near what their highs were back in, say that August of, 2000, I guess. They've all come off since then. And really in the exploration, sector, I think it's been, it's more to do with liquidity and just quiet volume. The investors out there, I think, are worried, like saying, like, every time they see gold go up, they go, oh, it's going to pull back like it has, like, over and over again. Where this time now, I see gold up over 2,000, holding steady. And like you and I just discussed, central banks buying record amounts at these levels. That tells me it's going higher. There's going to be a catalyst that'll drive these markets and hopefully the investors back into this sector.
Yeah, and I have heard that sentiment echoed as well from a lot of people, that the miners, particularly on the exploration and development side, are looking very undervalued here. So I'd like to talk about the banking crisis in the United States. You alluded to it there. Do you think we're going to see gold kind of return to its role as a safe haven as people start to kind of realize that perhaps the banking sector isn't as stable as everybody was led to believe?
Oh, I think that's a big worry. I think that's one of the reasons why gold's up where it is. I mean, you've got, I don't think this is what's happening in the banking with banks going under. I don't think that's over. I mean, there's a serious problem right now. It's quiet now. We haven't had anything for a while. They're trying to, stabilize things, but I still think that's a question for sure. And, gold always being that safe haven, you see in the central banks are they're worried about this stuff. So they're just accumulating the gold as much as they can. I've heard people say, cryptocurrencies, that's like the future. That's like the new gold kind of thing. But I don't know, unless I'm just haven't heard it, I don't hear central banks piling into cryptocurrencies and accumulating as a safe haven. It's gold. Gold's been a safe haven for thousands of years, and it still is to this day. Once you start to see that safe haven and that market picking up, I think the investor is going to come back. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And that's another good point. These central banks, they're not buying cryptocurrencies. And that is kind of my counter argument when people say, oh, gold is a relic, it's going away, cryptocurrencies are going to replace it. Well, I think I'd look to, what central banks are doing as a clear indication that gold's role in the economy as a safe haven asset and as a hedge against inflation, hyperinflation, as well as a way to store wealth outside of the financial system. All of those things, I think it's going to continue for a very long time. So I'd like to switch to copper now, because we've been hearing a lot recently about the amount of copper needed to successfully facilitate the energy transition. In fact, it's equivalent to more copper than has ever been mined in the history of humanity if all of these various countries want to meet their net zero carbon emissions goals. So how do you see the supply-demand fundamentals of copper playing out, and how important is it to find new sources of copper?
Oh, I mean, there's a huge number of articles and commentaries out there by, like the biggest banks, institutions, analysts, think tanks on this exact theme. The copper demand is going to increase substantially over the next decade and more. I mean, right now, I think you've got global stockpiles. They're currently at dangerously low levels. And, a lot of this is, obviously being driven. There's a number of countries right now that are starting to move away, as you just said, from fossil fuels into clean energy. So when you're starting to go into clean energy, solar panels, wind turbines, batteries, then, not just that, but take massive amounts of copper. And that's not to mention all the electrical grids that need to be either put in or updated from the old infrastructure that's been in place, because it's going to be a huge demand. I mean, you just look at, if you look at every house in every neighborhood, they all have electric car. You're going to need a lot more support with the existing grids and that. And it's all copper, right? There's such a massive amount of copper that goes into these. So just the infrastructure build out alone, I think going green I don't think you can keep up. The demand for copper is going to far outstrip what the supply is right now. And if we talk about, this evolution into electric vehicles from combustion engines, I mean, that's another huge, massive part, like as big as any of it right now. I mean, you look, say an electric vehicle, I think it takes about 3 to 4 times the amount of copper that a combustion engine vehicle has. Okay, then you look at a bus there, I think it's like 10 to 15 times the amount of copper. New exploration, we must start looking, because a lot of the existing copper mines and stuff have been, big open pit, easy to find, low hanging fruit. And that's what we've kind of gone after over, and that's just the natural evolution into mining, right? You're going to pick the lowest hanging fruit to go after first, and you're going to high grade that stuff first. And that's just how mining works. I mean, it's just, it makes sense. So now that we've done a lot of that sort of low-hanging fruit, we've picked it and we're mining it, the new exploration, we have to start looking deeper below the Earth's surface. And this requires significant amounts of deeper drilling and much larger exploration budgets. I don't have the statistics at my fingertips, but the number of new copper mines or deposits that must be discovered and brought to production to meet the world demand, it's mind-boggling. And the exploration needs to shift into high gear and right now, not tomorrow, right now. So the lag time, though, we have between a discovery and the production of a mine, that could take up to decades, 15, 20 plus years sometimes. So especially when you're considering the difficulty discovering deeper and deeper deposits, understanding complex, say, mining scenarios, overcoming metallurgical recovery challenges, and while having the pressure on a growing cost of exploration and also the project development, because all the costs are rising, from labor costs, infrastructure cost, equipment cost, fuel, like just everything. Everything is going up. So, I mean, it's becoming more and more capital intensive to find these.
Absolutely. Before we do dive into Golden Spike Resources, I just wanted to get your thoughts on an article on Fast Markets that said China's import market remains an important macroeconomic factor for the base metals market, including copper prices. The Chinese economic recovery will likely boost refined copper usage in the country and tighten global fundamentals in the second half of this year. So how do you see the reopening of the Chinese economy affecting the demand for copper and other base metals?
Well, once again, Jesse, I'll always defer to the experts on matters like the current state of the Chinese economy. But we all know China, it's amongst it is probably the largest economies in the world. And when China starts to pick up, the rest of the world starts to pick up. There's a great deal of move towards global electrification. And, this is going to require Chinese input from basic smelting, copper concentrates to manufacturing equipment and infrastructure. I mean, I'm looking right now, China accounts for, I think it's about 30% of the world demand. And that's just in their, for their building and construction sort of aspect of what the infrastructure build they're doing in China. So, I mean, with electronics, electric vehicles, their demand's only going to become stronger. And they're already the largest consumer in the world, And so them coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, I mean, they had really harsh lockdowns. So I think what the government, from what I understand, what they've done is they've done some, announced sort of big stimulus packages, to hopefully revitalize their economy and get things up and running again. And a lot of that's going to be to do with the building and construction sectors, which again takes a ton of copper. It's with the end of the lockdowns and with the stimulus package that the Chinese government has been providing. I mean, they said that already that sector is recovering at a very rapid pace. So, I mean, I don't think we've even felt the total sort of weight of what's happening in China right now. They had the most severe lockdowns, I think, out of anybody almost. So now that they're coming out of that, it's look out, game's off again.
Yeah, very much agree with that. So let's switch gears now to Golden Spike Resources. And maybe for those unfamiliar with the company, if you could give us the kind of 10,000 foot overview.
Okay. Let's see. Well, Golden Spike, I mean, it's a relatively new company. We went public back on Canadian Securities Exchange. I believe it was around September of 2021. And then most recently, we've also listed both on the OTCQB and the Frankfurt Stock Exchanges, and that sort of, to give us, that was just recent, like in April of this year, and that gives us, both U.S. and European exposure, which is, I think, is vital to these companies. You've got to attract investment dollars from wherever you can get it. So the U.S. and European exposure, I think, was vital for us, and so that's all taken place. And we understand, like as a company, we understand where the world's headed with the move towards the electrification. And, we believe for the upside for copper is absolutely massive. And when we look back, looking for a new project, one of our priorities was to, we wanted to stay in a safe jurisdiction, but one that has, upside with, like as far as minerals, exploration, and covering areas that have maybe been overlooked. And I think we're in that jurisdiction. Newfoundland, I think, has been underexplored, and we're excited to have the property that we have in the area that we're at. So our search criteria was kind of like for near surface high grade copper mineralization along with gold, zinc, cobalt, silver, and we believe like all those ingredients we have found at our Gregory River property. And this is what's getting us so cranked up and excited about this 2023 summer program that we're about to embark on. Is I don't think it gets any better. As a mining, as an exploration executive, this is where it's at. This is the fun times now, and we're going into a commodity that, as we've just discussed, is in short supply, and it's going to be in a lot more more of a short supply going forward. I mean, it's as things are building out here, I'm hearing upwards of we need double the copper output within the next 10 years than what we have now. So that tells me that there's going to be a huge demand going forward, and hopefully much higher prices as well. And then one last thing, our executive team and board, we remain relatively small, but each person brings, their own unique experience and solid background to the table as part of our team. And we're dedicated to delivering value to the shareholders. So what we strive is keep our overheads costs way down, and let's, to a minimum, ensure that the majority of the investor dollars that we raise and stuff is going into the ground towards, our ultimate goal of making a significant discovery.
Last month, you announced that you were starting phase 2 of your exploration program at the Gregory River property. So could you update us on that? What does phase 2 entail, and what are the end goals there?
Yeah, no, that's totally correct. But however, what I'll do is I'll recap what we achieved sort of last year. Shortly after we acquired the Gregory River near the sort of the end of July of 2022, so last summer, we really wanted to have a solid understanding of the geology, mineralization, and historical work that has been completed. So we took the time, put this a lot on Rob, our geologist, to compile and digitize all of that information. So then we went out to review many of the main targets, areas in the field, collect samples. Most of the samples, came back with high-grade copper, strong anomalies of pathfinder elements supporting the historical reported work and providing us with a level of, confidence and exploration potential on this property that it's significant. So we did a soil grid over our vein zone target, which came back with some really exciting results, revealing several westerly trending multi-element anomalies with copper, zinc, gold, cobalt, and various pathfinder elements that overlap with or occur adjacent to the location known as of the known veins at some of our main targets. These anomalies, they can be traced, some of them for more than a kilometer. A lot of there's a bit of overburden, so you can't really, follow these on surface. That's where we come in with the soil sampling and stuff, and which eventually be some IP work. But really exciting stuff. I mean, really high grade. We're very excited about that sort of vein zone and getting to work on that as well. And we also wanted, at the same time, we wanted to complete another soil grid further south over previously what we think is an underexplored trend along, the main Gregory River VMS corridor. But the winter moved in a little faster than we expected, so we ended up having that soil grid that we were doing. We postponed it. We'll be doing that once we pick up here this summer. And then I guess finally part of like our main objective last year was for further consolidate our land position. We had pretty decent size, piece of property, but there was two key pieces inside and our two key licenses, I guess you'd say. And that added like significant target areas for our property, including what we call the Steep Brook and the Lode 9. And so this brings, I think, our current, project, we're at about just over 3,400 hectares. So with the land position now tied up, permitting is completed. We initiated, phase 2 exploration in just in this last April. We plan to do two winter IP geophysical grids. One was on the Lode 9, and then the next one to follow up was going to be on the Steep Brook. Both VMS targets, and we were able to get the first grid done and completed, but we're currently waiting. Right now we're waiting on that data to come back to give us some, that'll generate some really good drill targets for us. But then due to the, rapidly melting once spring started, it came in a little quicker than we anticipated. So the transition in the spring conditions, the Steep Brook grid, we just couldn't get in there and complete that. So once the weather clears and the snow's gone, we'll be back in, complete the IP work that was done, that we were going to do on the Steep Brook. During the phase 2, we're also going to complete the soil grid over the VMS trend from last year and do infill sampling over the main anomalies from the vein zone soil grid to better sort of define the soil anomalies and provide support for more drill targets. So we're just we're at that point of like doing this IP soil work and stuff, picking out some what we think are going to be fantastic targets to be chasing, this summer as once we get the drill rigs in there. Some of the other key, I guess, study during the phase 2 will be detailed property-wide lithostructural interpretation using, previously completed. We've done airborne magnetic survey. This will help also support the geological mapping and again, the drill hole targeting. We've done putting all these layers of information together to really get some of the best targets possible for our, summer program. And so really, as we're coming into the summer, this will be later in the summer, we'll have 3 main areas. So the Lode 9, which we've just completed the IP on. Steep Brook will be the next spot once the IP is completed there. And, and then locations and depths of the drill holes, once we get the IP data back and all the soil surveys are completed, that'll give us, our idea of how deep we're going to drill these things. But we're initially, like, for budgeting for this program for this summer, we're looking at somewhere between 3,000 to 4,000 meters of diamond drilling. So that'll give us, a good amount of news to come out. Probably that'll start spilling out into the fall. So our objective, I guess, more or less with this program is to follow up on some of the exploration success by historical explorers at the 3 main target areas and to make, hopefully a significant VMS discovery. And at the vein zone, we like to find, long strike continuity of the historically explored high-grade veins. And, this will establish areas with, that have already shown significant grade, and we just need to show the widths and stuff. So, we can't wait to get this, all these programs underway. It's a very exciting time for the company.
Great. Sounds like you have a lot going on there. And you did touch on the historical work done on the Gregory property. So could you maybe talk about that and how you're able to leverage that in your exploration efforts?
Yeah, absolutely. As we discussed, earlier, after acquiring the option to earn 100% interest in the Gregory River property, that was July 2022, we kind of focused on completing a thorough investigation or say compilation of all the historical exploration. And we were pleased to find just out how much quality and useful data there was. So it was a very worthwhile exercise. And again, I'll pat the geologist for Golden Spike, Rob Sinnott, on the back for what he's done there. It's just him and another gentleman, Alex from Planet X, did a fantastic job of compiling all that information. So, with all that information, we were able to determine that intermittent historical exploration, over the property and within the district has been carried out, by a lot of companies over the years since high-grade copper mineralization was, it was first discovered back kind of like in the early 1920s. So it's been, there's been work done on this property for many years. Subsequent exploration right up until from 1920s to the 1970s, it mainly focused on the vein-style mineralization and led to, discovery of multiple high-grade and copper and gold vein structures, which was, fantastic. And then skip forward a little bit, you get up to the 1980s. That's when exploration started focusing more, on potential, say, strata-bound VMS, copper, zinc, silver, gold mineralization on the property and in the district. So with most of the comprehensive programs that were done in that time, you go back, Rio Tinto, they did a program from 1981 to 1982. Duval, they were in there from, I believe it was 1981, 1985. Noranda, 91 to 92. And then skip forward to the 2000s, we had a smaller company, Playfair Mining. They went in and they worked the property. They did work from 2005 to 2008. So there's been, some big companies in there. There's been, a number of work programs that have been done over the years. And this work led to the discovery of several VMS-style mineralized showings and prospects, both on and adjacent to the property. Even though this work was completed, these companies barely scratched the surface and never really followed up on their discoveries. So as far as Golden Spike is aware, no companies really have completed any significant exploration on this property now since Playfair, which they ended in 2008. So like I say, the surface was scratched, but there's exciting sort of elements to the property in different areas that were kind of gone over, but for whatever reason, they moved on. So we're really excited to have this property and to be in the position we're in with all the historical data and stuff that's been compiled.
Could you provide some color on Newfoundland as a jurisdiction? Because I noted that the Fraser Institute rates it as among the world's most favorable jurisdictions to explore. Could you let us know why that is?
Well, Jesse, the Fraser Institute, not only in the top, but it was actually the fourth most attractive jurisdiction, like Labrador, Newfoundland, for mining investment. So, that's, obviously huge, because that was one of the big things on our list was let's find a friendly mining jurisdiction to do work in. There's such facts. I mean, you got to look, they've been mining and they've been exploring there for years, but it's still what we think is a very underexplored region. There seems to be a potential for a lot of, what we talked about earlier, these close to surface, relatively good size, rich type deposits. So being the underexplored, but a very friendly jurisdiction to be mining in, they've got a great mining code. They're really supportive of mining. And they like the mining, the local government's very favorable it's a big part of their economy, right? There's an excellent workforce that's already in place there. We've got access to well-trained contractors. Permitting has been, we've got our guys that work in Newfoundland that have done the permitting and stuff, but there's been no issues with the permitting. Maybe they've slowed a little bit just because of a staking rush that happened with the discovery of newfound gold. So, but the permitting, we haven't had any issues whatsoever. So it's been relatively easy getting all that stuff done. And then you got the communities. We got strong commitment from the communities to do this work, and they're very favorable. I mean, it means so much to their economy and stuff. So, and I think that's such a huge, important aspect is being friendly with the communities and having their blessing to get this work done and to do what we're doing. And I guess one of the other things that we have going for us in that area is we got the ability, we can work year round. There's 2 transition seasons, and we're just going through that right now, is that winter into the spring. And then we've got another sort of like end of fall into winter. And that also kind of coincides with moose hunting season. Yeah, unless you got your orange vest on, I don't think you want to be working out in those areas. So, we'll have a solid program late spring, right through the summer into the fall. We should have a great, sort of a flow of news coming out of the company. So yeah, and it's just like you said, it's such a great jurisdiction to be in. We couldn't be any happier with the guys that we're working with in Newfoundland, and we're excited.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Keith. Before I let you go, do you have any final thoughts you want to share on Golden Spike Resources? Of course, I'm going to put links to the website as well as social media profiles below, but and any last words you'd like to leave investors with about the company?
Yeah, I suggest anybody, please follow us. I mean, we've got, like I said, we've been gearing up for this program. We've been public for over a year and a half. We've got our property of merit as of last July, the Gregory River, and we're just about to start a very intense exploration program through IP work, soil sampling, but obviously what everybody gets most excited about, and that's, a pretty aggressive drill program. And that's, we got 3 really, really, good looking areas to go after to start with, and that's what our whole. So we've got the whole plan. We're ready to go. Starting here in the next couple of weeks, once the weather clears, we're going to hit the ground hard, and we're going to work right through the spring, right through the summer, and into the fall. So, I think we're going to be an intriguing story. I think we've got huge upside. This is a fairly new company, and I couldn't be more excited about getting going here.
Awesome. Well, thanks once again for joining us, and looking forward to getting continued updates from Golden Spike Resources.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Jesse. Really appreciate it. Have a great rest of the day.
Commodity Culture is a series on commodities and natural resources. If you would like to see more, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you're always up to date with the latest episodes.